Hello, I'm Sarah. This is Hardcover Hearts, and this is my week of reading wrap-up. This is where I talk about the books that I read this week, what I'm currently reading, and then potentially could read next week based on my mood. So I had a very good reading week this week. I'm continuing on with Women in Translation Month, which has been exceptional, just exceptional this year. I'm so thrilled that I kind of put a focus on this, and the books that I'm reading are exemplary. The first book that I finished was phenomenal. This was Bonjour Twist by Françoise Sagan, and this was translated by Heather Lloyd. Now, I was told that people were like, oh, it's kind of beachy and kind of frothy, kind of read. And it felt like they were justifying or dismissing it a little bit. And I don't think they needed to do that in any way, shape, or form. This was a great read. Set in the 1950s, we've got a teenager who she has a close relationship with her father. Her father and she have lost her mother and a few years earlier. And they're both they feel like they've maybe gone through the initial stages of it. And the father is dating. He's kind of out there and he's a little immature. He's definitely narcissistic. He definitely is really thinking about his needs and his needs only, and surrounding himself with people who make him feel great. And they're going away on a vacation to the French Riviera from Paris, and it's supposed to just be the two of them. And then out of nowhere, he springs on that he's going to bring his young girlfriend, but it's okay because they get along, right? And this young girlfriend is just a little bit older than she is. And so, but I guess she likes her. And so she wants to make her father happy. And so she goes along with it. It kind of continues about, her being in this awkward situation, and she has just nothing but time to kill. And she is as easily bored as her father and just as immature. So when he does something to kind of introduce even a more explosive element into their beach vacation, things go awry. And it was a really short book. It's like a novella. This is two books in one. This is A Certain Smile as well. I only read Bonjour Twist. And I just really liked it. I think it was interesting. It was complicated. It showed a young girl's sexuality, and this version has portions of it that were otherwise not included, that were kind of banned from the English translation. I can see why this was considered scandalous given her sexuality, her budding sexuality, how she's leveraging her sexuality, as well as the father and the things that are kind of introduced. I get it, but I thought it was really good. I'm so glad I finally read it. I get why this is considered, one of those French summer classics. Then I couldn't help it. I literally knew exactly when this book was dropping. I was already in line at the library. I was ready for it. And I wanted to read the print version, but I wasn't able to get the print copy. I wasn't able to get the audio copy. And it dawned on me, we'll check Scribd. And sure enough, Scribd had it, but only the audio. So I kind of hem and hawed for only about 3 minutes. And then I went ahead and did it. And this is The Madness of Crowds, number 17 in the Chief Inspector Armand Gamache series by Louise Penny. The audio book of this the narrator is phenomenal. Like, I actually feel like he's Gamache embodied, and so I've gone back and forth whatever I can get my hands on faster is what I usually choose in this series. So the series is always phenomenal. It's a mystery series with literary and philosophical elements interwoven very naturally. It's very interesting. There's layers, there's deep character studies. It's quite interesting. And damn it, I binged it. It's done. It's already gone. I finished it so fast, and I even tried to not listen to it at a faster speed, to just savor all of the Three Pines glory. And it's already done. But it was brilliant. It was so good. She's getting better and better. And most importantly, what I really like about what she's done with this one is that she's addressing and confronting things head on. So there was a little bit ago where she was dealing with environmentalism, and she kind of started it in the background as kind of like a backstory, and it just kind of fizzled. It became more about the management and the politics of an environmental catastrophe than actually dealing with the environmental catastrophe. Whereas in this one, she opens up immediately with the fact that Gamache and his crew have been vaccinated, and they've been called in for an event, and they're supposed to do security for this event. And it's a little strange that he was asked specifically to do this with his team. And the woman that's going to be speaking, that he's providing the security for at this event, is a statistician who is spouting eugenics types of thought. And so her whole premise is that we should be sacrificing, we as a society should be sacrificing those who are who are holding us back, who are wasting resources. And that, it's just stats. It's not, why are you making this a moral argument kind of thing? And so we've got kind of like alt-right thinking. We've got the tipping point of when does an idea become something that's talked about all the time, and when it goes from a fringe idea into mainstream idea, like where does that point happen? It deals with also figureheads and heroes and icons. There's a very interesting character introduced that is a woman from the Sudan who is being hailed as, kind of saintly for all of the work that she's doing for young girls in the Sudan. And yet, she's a very unlikable character. And so to have, and yet the woman who's the statistician has this folksiness, has this way of bringing people in and talking to them that's very disarming and makes people feel very comfortable. And yet she's spouting true evil. So those dynamics, while a little heavy-handed, were still really interesting for her to see play out within the confines of Three Pines, and also with Gamache and his team. And as always, we go really deep into the psychology of how these different cases reflect inward and bring up things for the detectives that try to solve them. Exceptional. Just if you're already on this boat, I can't even tell you the joy you're going to get with reading this. It was so good. It was so good. I think if you haven't started, just know that started the first one, but just know that she started this many years ago. And there's some language in the first one in Still Life that she has toned down and stopped altogether, where it's a banter, kind of barbed and sharp, obnoxious banter, homophobic banter, and rude banter between people that live in this community. And they're friends, but that was kind of like the interesting thing about their relationship. As I said, she stopped it, but unfortunately, I always feel like I need to give that caveat when anybody starts the series, or if I start to rave about the series, because it does have that shaky start. But yeah, so voila, great next edition. Then I binged on this yesterday. I just laid out on the couch and I listened to this new release called The Plot by Hanff Korelitz. Now, this is a story within a story. It's like a book in a book, and it's really taking on the publishing industry, and it's taking on like the whole MFA publishing, who owns the story kind of world, and what happens when a book becomes a phenomenon. So I'm not going to give any spoilers. Everything that I'm saying right here is already in the information that you get about the book. So it starts off with our main character. His name is Jacob Finch Bonner, Jake, for short. And he's a writer. He has always aspired to be a writer and has all of these lofty kind of silly ideas about what it means to be a published writer. And, he's very pretentious. He's very full of himself. Well, he he gets into an MFA program himself and writes a lauded first book that gets a bunch of notice. And then his next books go nowhere and do nothing. And so he ends up being a kind of teacher at an MFA, kind of a third-rate MFA program. And he gets his comeuppance when he gets like probably the worst student in his class. And this student is smug. He's convinced that he's just there to be basically to network and be introduced to an agent. He's not going to share any of his work because he's got the best book ever, the best plot ever, surefire, guaranteed hit, period. And he's not going to let anyone take anything away. But he's there, he'll give other people his great advice. And it's that is quite engaging and funny and entertaining to watch. So the student is named Evan Parker, and he's even thinking about changing his name to be Parker Evan, to protect his privacy. He's not the brightest of characters for sure. So he won't do anything in class, but he has one-on-one session, private session with Jake, and they talk. And Jake, says some really nice things about the first little bit that he's shown, but he's very clear that's all he's going to share. He's only going to share that piece. And we actually go into the book. So we also read the first little bit of this novel, which creates that novel in novel kind of setup that's going to continue through the book. Nothing ends up happening. We end up kind of jumping forward. He's left that program. He's struggling. His diminishing returns, diminishing opportunities present themselves to him. And he keeps looking online to see like what's happening with this book. Has this book come out? Has it come out? Because he also believes that, it's a corker of a plot. He thinks that the plot is pretty amazing, but he hasn't seen any more than these first 6 pages. And as he's doing some research, as he's looking, he realizes and comes across a post that says that Evan Parker has died. And he died the reason it hasn't come out is because he died a little bit after the time when they had their MFA program. So he's shocked. And now all of a sudden he recognizes, well, the story's out, who's going to take the story? It's too important. And he goes through all the justifications in his mind as to why he needs to make sure that this gets in the hands of the public. So he writes the book. He writes the book and it blows up. It blows up and it becomes this big phenomenon, and he's touring and his life has changed completely. He's working on the second book. He's got an agent. Spielberg wants to do the movie rights. And he starts to get these emails from someone who knows what happened. And I'm just going to stop it there. This was very enjoyable. The narration I thought was great. I thought it was great as an audiobook. I think it may have been a little bloated if I read it as a book, because there's a lot of setup. There is a lot of character setup. It does make some of the things that happen even more enjoyable later, but it takes a long time to get there. So it felt a little bloated. But if you want kind of like the publishing world inside, and I would also say it's less of a who done it than a why, how done it kind of thing, because I figured out very early on who I thought was sending these emails and doing this terror campaign against him. But then it became how. So this is less of a mystery and more of a kind of a thrillery, but this is the right kind of thriller for me. I don't like stalkerish behavior, even though there is something in here that's kind of like that. So for me, I enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. I gave it 3.5 stars. Okay, then the next book is This is going to come out on September 14th of this year. And I got a NetGalley ARC. So thank you very much for that. And this is Assembly by Natasha Brown. So the reason I was interested in this, and number one, I kept hearing coming out of the booktubers and the bookstagrammers from England, how just damn good this was. And I thought, oh, well, I want my hands on it. Debut novel, very short, very to the point investigation of this woman's life in London. And she's very introspective, and she's observing what's happening in her life. She's reached a level of cachet, and she's going to the country for a garden party with her boyfriend to his family's home. And she's a Black woman, and her husband is a white man. She's got earned wealth, and he has old money. And so it's a interesting setup. I was interested also because people were comparing it, saying it had Mrs. Dalloway vibes. Still trying to think about that. So if you have heard that or see those vibes, let me know in the comments or hit me up on Instagram and DM, and let's talk about this, because I'd like to know a little more about where people think this is going. But so that's why I jumped in, and I could not read this fast enough. It was so smart. It was so new, so in tune. It's really about this woman she even talks about she's been ascending for so long, and now she's at the point where she needs to transcend. What does that look like? And she's in observer status. She's had something happen to her that's making her look and take a really hard look. Instead of just climbing the ladder and hitting those goals and being very, very type A personality to get to where she thinks she needs to go. Now she's arrived, and this thing has happened, and she's observing. And her observations are very astute, very smart. And she recognizes the performative nature of so much of what's going on around her. Man, I thought it was great. I really highly recommend, if you're in the US, put this on your radar. This will be great to read for Victober/Black British History Month, because there's a lot of things about the Windrush generation and kind of contextualizing what's happened for Black British people, and some of the things that are going on currently that still have ties back to colonialism, back to Windrush, back to some of these things. And I thought it was very well drawn. So this would be a good supplement for them. But yeah, be on the lookout for it. It was exceptional. Now let me tell you about the book that I just finished before I started this. And my heart is still kind of soaring. This is a weird little book. Y'all didn't tell me how offbeat and quirky and weird this was. But but you all just let me experience it for myself. Thank you very much. This is The Summer Book by Tove Jansen. And this was translated by Thomas Teal. I had very little understanding going in, as I usually try to do. I knew it was about an old woman and her granddaughter. And what this really is it's a set of vignettes of a family, a grandmother, father, and granddaughter, who are on this island for the summer. And this is in the Gulf of Finland. Yes. And it's absolutely charming. It's offbeat and quirky, and it has so much imagination. And it felt like it was talking about nature, the environmental nature of this little island and all of the things that they do to keep themselves entertained and being outside, and the flowers and the trees and the sand and the fish, all of these things, but also about human nature, because we have a grandmother near the end of her life, and she's kind of cranky, and she's worried about her granddaughter. She's worried that are they teaching her the things that she's going to need to know to be successful in the world? And the granddaughter, who is so spunky and so hilarious and so bold and sassy. And the pairing of the two of them is just perfect because this is not your typical kind of nurturing, doting grandmother. This is more of a grandmother who she's almost childlike at the stage of her life as well. And it's so well done. It's so unvarnished, and it's thoughtful and really sparse. Like there's not a lot of sentimentality. There's not a lot of flourish. It's just plain writing, but what's being said is just phenomenal. There are times when I absolutely laughed out loud, and there are times when I got really choked up. This is my first of her writing, and so I have more of her work, so I'm definitely going to be adding her to an author I need to read much more of. So phenomenal reads, right? I mean, like I had an exemplary week. So let's talk about what I'm currently reading. I said I cleared the deck, so all I have is Proust. I'm still chugging away, and I was hoping to get done with this month. It's not going to happen, but hopefully I'll be continuing on at the same clip that I am now. So then, what could I be reading next week? So I want to finish Women in Translation Month strong. So I want to continue with the Alberta and Freedom. This is the Alberta series, and this is number 2. Again, look with the hideous covers, right? I think I showed this before. This is by Cora Sandel. So I want to read this. This is translated by Elisabeth Rokkan. Then I want to spend a little bit more time revisiting this. I did this in audio, and I did this, I think I mentioned this in May when I did it. This is part of the group read for Women in Translation Month. I don't think I spent enough time with the second half of it, and I really want to go back and read the writing because we did an audio version on our drive. So this book is Minor Detail, and this is by Adania Shibli and translated by Elisabeth Jaquette. Gorgeous version. And the second half, this is a book told in 2 perspectives from 2 different timelines. The second timeline, I think, is just really, I want to spend more time, like I said. I didn't understand the construction when you're reading it, the construction of how she's doing it and how she's doing the mirroring wasn't as apparent. So I'd like to revisit that because it was phenomenal. And then for my In Real Life book club, we're meeting next week, and we're going to be talking about No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood. This is something that we're doing, we read the different prizes. And so I think this was a woman's prize. So we will be reading that. And other than that, that's all I've got. Really looking forward to kind of jumping into something for the rest of the day. And I would love to know, have you read any of these and what are your thoughts? That's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. As always, we are still in a global pandemic. Maintain safe social distance. Wear your mask. Wash your hands and don't touch your face. Talk to you next week. Bye.